Home and Away spoilers. Theo hands himself in to the police. Next week on Home and Away in the UK. As Perri learns that he's unlikely to be granted bail, Theo admits to Rose that he was the one hiding him, with Perri now facing the music over the death of his father Carl. Those close to him are under continued scrutiny from the police, leading Theo to make a confession. After discovering a traumatized Perri sitting in the backyard, with Carl's body in the pool nearby, Tane had no option but to call the police, given that Carl had broken his avo by approaching Perri, who had been subjected to physical abuse for most of his life. Tane was confident that the authorities would believe that it was in self-defense after Carl attacked him. But the recent trial which saw Carl found not guilty of assaulting him weighed heavily on Perri's mind. And with no faith in the justice system, Perri quietly slipped out of the house before Senior Constable Rose Delaney and her colleagues arrived. Running into a sympathetic Theo, who had faced similar violence from his own father and who Perri had previously confided in. Perri asked if he could hide out in his car. Theo instead offered him refuge at Summer Bay Auto. Perri spent most of this week hidden away in the garage whilst genuinely clueless to his whereabouts. Tane came under suspicion of having helped him escape. When Rose later told Theo that the longer Perri was on the run, the more guilty he looked, Theo decided to take Tane to Perri in the hope of talking some sense into him. After Tane left Perri to make his own decision about the sort of man he wanted to be, Perri returned home before Tane and Harper took him to the police station. However, Rose had since received news that Carl's autopsy showed water in his lungs, putting doubts on Perri's version of events that his dad must have hit his head in the struggle before falling in the water. On his arrival at the station, Perri was arrested on suspicion of murder and locked up in a cell. Next week, Tane insists to Rose that the autopsy results don't change a thing in his eyes. He knows that Perri was acting purely in self-defense. Rose doesn't agree, and informs Tane that he's lucky she's not throwing him in a cell too. Still suspecting he had been hiding Perri all along, a legal aid lawyer Jane arrives and Perri recounts his side of the story. The facts don't look good down on paper, and Tane isn't impressed by the fact that Jane looks young enough to be on work experience. When Perri is interviewed, he explains that while he was being held underwater he had grabbed Carl's shirt, causing his dad to roll over and hit his head. As Carl landed in the water, Perri saw blood and assumed his dad was dead. Rose picks apart his story, asking whether he checked for a pulse or attempted to save him, until Jane calls a stop to the interview. Perri is returned to the cells pending a bail hearing the following day. And that evening Theo heads over to see Tane for an update. Tane gravely explains that if the police found out that they knew of Perri's whereabouts, even if Tane only knew for a few short hours, they could both be charged as accessories. Meanwhile, Justin and Leah's short marriage is already at breaking point, the result of Justin being forced to spend the night at a remote cabin with Claudia after she made a play for him. Although Claudia later explained to Leah that Justin was completely innocent of any wrongdoing, Justin was offended that Leah had taken the word of Claudia's estranged husband Eric rather than trusting him. As a result, Justin has spent the night in the motel. When Theo catches up with him, he tells Justin that whilst he isn't going to get involved, avoiding Leah isn't going to fix their issues. Back at the house, Leah talks things through with Marilyn, who is keen to get her tarot cards out. Much to Leah's frustration, as she draws the Eight of Wands, the card of communication, Marilyn tells Leah that the message is clear: she needs to talk to Justin. As Leah dismisses Marilyn's radical advice, by pointing out that Justin is the one who walked away, Theo comes home and is met with an interrogation from Leah about Justin's movements. Exasperated by the day's events, Theo tells Leah that he is not going to be a go-between and there's people out there with real problems, before storming to his room. The next day, Jane explains to Perri that his chances of bail aren't good given that he's a flight risk. She points out that if whoever had helped him came forward, and was able to corroborate Perri's story and state of mind, it could be key in swaying the magistrate. Back in the bay, Theo bumps into Rose, who tells him that Perri is unlikely to get bail, and that she doesn't know why Tane doesn't come clean, when she points out that Tane could get 20 years in prison, given he's already on a suspended sentence. Theo makes a big decision. Later, heading to the police station, Theo admits to Rose that he was the one hiding Perri. Justin and Leah are forced to put their differences aside as they head to the police station to support their nephew. Justin tries to appeal to Rose to let Theo off, but she pushes back, explaining that whilst Theo is not yet under arrest, what he did is still very serious. Justin and Leah are furious as they head into the interview room to talk to Theo, but soon empathize when Theo explains the reason behind his actions, telling them that Perri had been abused by Carl since he was a kid. The pair remind Theo that he could have come to them for help, but are left feeling guilty when Theo points out they've had their own stuff going on. When Cash later comes into the station with a coffee for Rose, she explains her dilemma, not knowing why Theo would have done something so stupid. Cash points out to the newly promoted senior constable that she is able to use her discretion in cases like this, and tells her about Theo's own history, his father's violence being the reason Theo came to Summer Bay in the first place. Rose is taken aback, but has a new clarity on Theo's actions. When she returns to the interview room, Rose has made a final decision. Will she let Theo off, or feel as though she needs to step up in her new role and charge him?
Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more movie spoilers next week. Goodbye and see you again.